One of the best ways to speed up your VR development is to actually not use a headset at all. Yep, you heard that right. All we need to do is basically just come up with a script that detects whether or not you have a headset connected. And then if that headset is connected, then it'll go to the headset. But if it's not connected, then it just lets you play, in a first person or third person mode. So a better way to do this is just test when the computer is in flat screen mode. And for Mac and Linux devices, this means you don't have to run a build to do testing. You can just, hit run and you can test in a first person, third person mode. Before we get into specifics, I would like to give a big shout out to Coricia, one of the admins in our Discord server who put together the initial project for this tutorial and has been a big help to doing future tutorials as well. So you'll see a lot more of their stuff in the future. As well as I need to give a big shout out to Unity, who's actually sponsoring this video. So I appreciate the cool merch, and we'll get into more of that a little bit later. So a few notable examples of what we're trying to accomplish here are going to be the Forest and Elite Dangerous, and there's several more, but these are just the ones that come to mind. So you'll notice this example of me playing the Forest, that the gameplay is actually almost exactly the same in VR as it is doing a 2D, as we call pancake mode version. So your character is still walking around, able to pick up things and build stuff, and all of the mechanics and gameplay is the same. It's just how you interact with the world is a little bit different. So instead of pointing and clicking with the mouse, all I have to do is reach out and grab with the controller to pick stuff up. So it's slightly different as far as interactions go, but the rest of the gameplay is all the same. Which, even if you're not planning on having your game be a 2D pancake version, if you're making a VR game and you're not planning on having a 2D version of it, it is beneficial to kind of develop this system on the side to allow you to test it a whole lot faster. Now back to Unity. I mentioned they are sponsoring this video, so we're going to jump into Unity, the game engine we all know and love, and actually start to build out a very simple version of what I've been showing you. Now this is a default URP 3D project in Unity that I have just set up, and we're going to go through, set it up for VR, and then I'll show you how to add the switching back and forth. Now, I mentioned earlier that Unity is actually sponsoring this project, and they really said I could talk about anything I want. And the biggest reason why I stick with Unity over any other game engine is because of their built-in XR, VR, AR support. And the XR plugin management is by far my favorite way to build anything any kind of VR application. It makes it super simple, and as you'll see, there's a lot of code that we can plug into that makes it easy to just really add whatever we want, like this kind of switcher back and forth. So I will always and forever recommend Unity as long as they keep up with this development as they have been. They've been really active with this XR development, and we've been getting a lot of updates. As you've seen, it's been changing a lot, but it is worth it. So I definitely recommend Unity, and I appreciate them for sponsoring this video. Now, I'm assuming that you've set up a VR project before. If you have not and don't really know how to set up a basic Unity VR project, I have a video about that. I'll link in the top corner of this video. There we go, everything's set up. We're gonna add a XR origin. We're gonna add an XR origin action based to the scene. That's gonna add our XR interaction manager, which to this, we're gonna add an input action manager. We're gonna add the default input actions there. And from here, we should be able to go ahead and hit play, and you should have the left and right hand lasers showing up for you and all of that. I'm going to go ahead and just create an empty game object called environment. And then to the environment game object, we're just going to add a 3D object, plane. and that's going to act as our ground. Now, we want to add in, so we have our XR character, which is just going to be our XR origin. We want to have a kind of a desktop mode character as well. So I'm just going to right click, create an empty, and we're going to call this desktop character. And then underneath the desktop character, we're just going to add a camera. And we're going to tag this as main camera as well. So right now we have two main cameras in the scene. We have this camera, and then we also have the XR Origins camera in the main camera here, which acts as the head. And what we're essentially going to do in the script is turn one or the other of these off based on if the VR headset is connected, or you can just do a checkbox and say yes or no. So we'll add all of that in as well. And then one more thing on this desktop character, I just grabbed the simple character controller script from Unity. We're just going to drop that on the character here. This just, allows you to move around as the character, but just pretend that this can be any kind of first person, third person character that you have set up. It just needs to all be inside of one game object. So let's make our script. We're going to right click, create a new C# script, and we're just going to call this detect VR. We're going to wait for that to open up. I am using the IDE called JetBrains Writer, so it's a little bit different than Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code. You may see a little bit different coloring from the variables and methods and stuff that I write in, but all of the code is going to be the same. So the IntelliSense and coloring may vary a little bit, but the code should be exactly the same if you want to copy this. Or if you would like access to this whole project, if you want to download this whole project, there is a link to my Patreon down in the description. And by subscribing and becoming a member, you get access to early videos and all of the code from any of my tutorials. All the projects are available to download. We have our basic mono behavior script. We're just going to delete the update method since we are not going to be using that in this particular instance. I'm going to delete a couple of the using statements up here, just kind of clean the script up a little bit. And we're going to need access to two variables. So we need our XR origin, which is going to end up being our VR character controller or VR player, and then we need access to the desktop player. So we're going to do a public game object. We'll call this XR origin. And then another public game object. We'll call this desktop character. You can obviously name these variables whatever suits you if you think you have a little bit better of a name or whatnot. Now, there are some specific ways to get information about what kind of VR hardware is connected. If there is one connected, just various information, and there's actually a really good GitHub gist about all of this that I will also link down in the description. First thing we need to do is check and see if there is any kind of XR settings available. We're going to say var XR settings, and we're going to have that equal to XR general settings, and this is going to add a using statement unityengine.xr.management. So if I hit tab there, it's going to go ahead and add this using statement up here at the top. And then out of XR settings, we want an instance. So this is just a singleton that is available to us to call. And then we're going to say if XR settings is equal to null, then we're going to do a debug log and just say that the XR settings are null. So XR general settings is null, and then we're going to return. So say, okay, we didn't actually have access to any XR settings, something's going wrong, let's just jump out of this method here. And I'm just going to copy and paste this whole statement here, and then we're going to change settings to manager. And then instead of getting the XR settings from the XR general instance, we're just going to call XR settings. So XR manager is going to be equal to XR settings dot manager. So we wouldn't be able to complete this statement if XR settings is null. That's why we are returning out earlier if XR settings is null. So we're just going to go another layer deep here and from settings into the manager. And then we'll update our log statement. We'll just call it XR manager settings. And the same thing we're returning if there's nothing there. And then we're going to do this actually one more time. And instead of XR manager this time, we're going to call this XR loader. And then we're going to say XR loader equals XR manager loader. XR manager dot active loader. Oh, and I forgot to change this if statement to XR manager, and we want to change this if statement to XR loader. So just make sure everything matches up nicely. And then in here, we'll say XR loader is null if we don't get to this point. But if we get to this point and XR loader is null, that just means that there is no VR headset connected. So from this point, we can still put out the log statement, and then we're just also going to turn off the VR player, whatever game object that we have designated as, the VR part of the game. So do XR origin dot set active false. And then we're going to do the opposite for the desktop version of it. So desktop character set active true. And then we can return at the end of that. And then if we get through all of these, so if we have XR settings, if we have a manager, and then if we do not have a loader, or if we do have a loader, so we have all of these things, that means we do have a VR headset connected and we want to turn that on. So then we're just going to, I'll just copy out this debug and the set active statements, and then we'll change the debug log statement to not null, and then we'll just swap the set active statements. So we want the VR character controller to be true, and we want the desktop character to be false. There we go. So now this is being called on start. So whenever you hit play, this automatically runs and checks if we have some XR settings, if we have an XR manager, a loader, and will turn off and on the appropriate things. And you can also, turn more stuff off and on here as well. If you want to, make a completely different VR versus pancake mode game, feel free to, even add in a new class that when you trigger something will, make your game a little bit different based on, what control type you're doing. But for this instance, we can just save that and jump back into Unity. And from here, we need to add Detect VR somewhere in here. So I'm just going to right click and create a Detect VR empty game object that we can drop our script onto. And then we'll just designate whichever the XR origin is and whatever the desktop character is. They're named appropriately, which is nice. Save our project. And I do have my VR headset connected. Let me make sure it's turned on. All right, and then if I hit play, you'll see that I can move around my lasers. And I don't have a movement. I haven't set up locomotion inside here yet, but if that was available, I could also do that. And you'll notice that desktop character over here on the side got turned off. Now, if let's close Oculus here so that now my computer doesn't recognize that a VR headset's connected anymore. And I hit play. And you'll see my XR origin turns off. And so now you'll see my camera moving around just from arrow keys and mouse movements. And now it's off the screen and I can't find it. There it is. Let's add one more thing before we wrap this up. What if you don't want to, like I did, turn Oculus off? What if I wanted to keep my Oculus app on and running in the background and not have to connect or disconnect my headset? How can I do that? Well, that's actually pretty simple. We can just add in a checkbox and say start in VR over here, and that can automatically toggle that off or on. So let's jump back into the code. We scroll all the way back up to the top. We can just add a public bool variable, and we'll just call it start in VR. And bools automatically start out as false. So we're just going to set this to true initially. So now let's put this whole thing into an if statement. So we're going to say if start in VR is true, then we want this whole section here. So we're assuming we want to start in VR, so we're going to do everything that we just coded out. But if we don't want to start in VR, we really only need this little section right here. So in the else statement, I'll just paste that. So we'll just automatically turn the XR origin off and turn the desktop character on. So if we start in VR, we do all these things. If we don't start in VR, then we're just going to turn the desktop character on. Sounds pretty simple. And we are duplicating these, so you could throw that into a method and just call the method twice instead of actually typing it out twice. So one of the main rules of code is just don't repeat yourself. So a good way, if you're actually going to turn this into an actual game, I would turn this into a method. That way you would only have to change things once. And then another thing I would do is actually change this from a mono behavior to a scriptable object, and then it'll automatically just run at the start of the game, and it won't run at the start of a scene, which is a little bit of a different thing. So every time you change levels, this won't rerun. So just a couple things to keep in mind for an actual game versus something like this, which is just a tutorial. So let's try this out. I'm going to save it, jump back into Unity, and you'll see we now have the start in VR. So we're going to have that checked, and I'm going to make sure my headset is all connected still. There we go. All right, so I've got my headset connected. We have start in VR checked. We're going to make sure our original code still works. Do a little bit of testing that way still. And yes, it does come up, and I can move my controller around. Perfect. Now, let's uncheck start in VR. Oculus is still running down here at the bottom. I'm going to hit start, and you should see, yep, XR origin turns off, and I can move around in first person. Perfect. So now, based on whether you want to test in VR or whether not, you can just check or uncheck this, and then if it is checked and you don't actually have a VR headset plugged in, it'll just default back down to starting in desktop mode for you. So has a little bit of troubleshooting built in. If you're interested in doing a deep dive into VR and learning all the ins and outs, how to do multiplayer, how to make larger games that are more optimized, how to use the XR Interaction Toolkit, how to use other frameworks like AutoHand or Hurricane VR, then I am actually coming out with a course towards the end of this year. So if you're interested in something like that, check out the link down in the description to sign up to get notified about updates to that and to get a pretty big discount code when it does end up coming out. I really enjoy teaching y'all how to create in VR, and I want to selfishly have a lot more games to play in VR. So if you're interested in becoming a full-time professional VR developer, I have a course for you. It's coming out towards the end of this year. So just sign up with your email and you'll get notified as updates start to roll out. Thanks again, Caricia, for helping me get this project started and giving a lot of the code in there so it doesn't take me a while to do research and whatnot. It really helps out as far as my time management goes. If you have any questions, leave a comment or come hang out in the Discord, and I'll see you in the next one.